after a week of excavations, we start to pick up, pottery and discovering this destruction layer. Really getting our hands black from the fire of the destruction.
Of the Babylonians.
Oh yeah. So it was obvious that we are having this original level of the first step.
So I took a small axe and I started digging there, and within a few minutes I found this, what I thought was a copper earring. 2 minutes later I found another one. All of a sudden I start seeing what I thought was just another coin, but it was definitely bigger and started growing more and more. Like, my eyes were like lit up. I'd never seen something like that in my life.
Little by little we found out that actually it's very large medallion.
And we started to see the two symbols around the menorah, the shofar and the Torah scrolls.
Jerusalem sits on layers. 3,000 years of civilizations built on top of each other, each generation burying the one before. Somewhere beneath the modern streets, beneath the Ottoman walls, beneath the rubble of conquests and destructions, lies the truth about ancient Israel. About kings the Bible says ruled with wealth and power. About kingdoms scholars say never existed. For 50 years, one woman spent her life digging through those layers, Dr. Eilat Mazar. She started as a child, crawling through excavation trenches with her grandfather. She died at 64, still documenting discoveries, still fighting to make people see what the stones were telling her. What did she find that mattered so much? What was buried beneath Jerusalem that was worth her entire life?
This is the only place that you can visit the first temple period structure in Jerusalem until now, that you can walk inside this construction from that early period, knowing that it was built at the time of King Solomon.
The answer challenges everything modern scholars believe about the Bible, about whether the stories are history or myth, about whether David and Solomon were real kings or legendary figures invented by scribes centuries later. The academic establishment had decided. The case was closed. The Bible exaggerated. The archaeological record proved it. Then Mazar started finding walls and gates and seals with names written in ancient Hebrew. Names that match the Bible exactly, from the exact time periods the Bible describes, and the exact locations the Bible pinpoints.
We revealed a very significant part of the palace. I think that we showed in the beginning that the dating to the first half of the 10th century is really establishing quite well.
She found evidence that shouldn't exist. Evidence that a powerful 10th century kingdom controlled Jerusalem. Evidence that contradicted decades of scholarly consensus. Evidence that suggested the Bible might actually be telling the truth. The minimalist school dominated biblical archaeology for decades. Their position was elegant and simple. The Bible's accounts of David and Solomon were propaganda. Later scribes, writing during the Babylonian exile, invented glorious stories about Israel's past to give their defeated people hope. They created legends of powerful kings who never really existed, of vast building projects that never happened, of a golden age that was pure fiction. The evidence seemed to support them. Archaeologists excavated Jerusalem for over a century. They found Roman remains, Byzantine churches, Crusader fortifications, Islamic palaces. But from the 10th century BCE, the time Solomon supposedly ruled, they found almost nothing. No palaces, no massive walls, no monumental gates. Just pottery shards and house foundations, suggesting a small village. Not a thriving capital. The minimalists had won the argument. David and Solomon, if they existed at all, were minor tribal chieftains. The Bible had turned them into legends. Case closed. Every archaeology student learned this. Every textbook taught it. The scholarly consensus was settled. Eilat Mazar disagreed. Not because she was religious. She wasn't particularly devout. Not because she was biased. She was a scientist who followed evidence. She disagreed because she believed something fundamental that her colleagues had forgotten. Ancient texts matter. Written sources contain information. The Bible, whatever else it might be, was also a historical document, written by people who lived in ancient Jerusalem, who walked its streets, who knew its geography, who recorded what they saw. If you want to find ancient Jerusalem, start with the texts that describe it. Use them as a map. Then dig. Then let the physical evidence confirm or deny what the texts claim. That was her method. Simple, scientific, controversial. In 2010, her team was excavating on the Ophel. That's the narrow ridge that connects the ancient city of David to the southern wall of the Temple Mount. The Bible describes this area specifically. 1 Kings chapter 7 says Solomon built his palace here, built his government complex here. Nehemiah chapter 3 confirms it, describing the Ophel as part of the royal quarter.
In our excavations at the Ophel, right to the south of the Temple Mount, we found the two seal impressions of Hezekiah and Isaiah in the same archaeological context, at about 2 meters apart from each other, together with dozens of other items of the same period.
Mazar's team removed meters of accumulated earth and rubble. They documented every layer, photographed every stone, collected every pottery shard. They reached bedrock in some places, original construction levels in others. And they found something massive. A wall, 34 meters long. That's 112 feet, nearly the length of 4 school buses placed end to end. The wall measured 2.5 meters wide, 8 feet of solid stone construction. The masonry was professional. Large-hewn blocks fitted together with precision. The kind of work that requires skilled craftsmen, organized labor, and centralized authority directing the project. But here's what made this discovery explosive. This wall wasn't new. Previous archaeologists had found it decades earlier. It was on maps. It was documented. It was measured. Everyone knew it existed. They just had the date wrong. For years, scholars assumed this wall was built in the 8th century BCE, about 200 years after Solomon's time. They assumed it was construction from a later king, maybe Hezekiah, maybe Uzziah, someone who came long after Solomon. Mazar looked at those assumptions and decided to test them. She didn't accept the previous dating just because that's what earlier archaeologists believed. She excavated deeper. She went down to the base of the wall, to the original ground level where construction began. She examined the fill, the dirt and rubble brought in to level the area before building started. In archaeology, you date structures by what's underneath them and what's buried in their foundations. The pottery in that construction fill tells you when the building was erected. If you find pottery from 800 BCE in the foundation, the wall was built in 800 BCE or later.
The datable material that came out of it dated from the Middle Bronze Age, so around the time of Abraham, all the way through till an ending during the early Iron II, or this period that belongs to King Solomon's time. So there's nothing earlier, nothing later than that was found down here.
If you find pottery from 1000 BCE, the wall was built around that time. The pottery dated exclusively to the 10th century BCE. Nothing from later periods mixed in the construction fill. Nothing from the 8th or 9th centuries, just 10th century material. The wall was built exactly when Solomon ruled, according to biblical chronology, in exactly the location where the Bible says Solomon built his palace fortifications, using exactly the kind of massive construction the Bible attributes to Solomon's building projects. One piece of evidence could be coincidence, but Mazar found more. Connected to that wall stood a gatehouse, 4 chambers, massive stone construction, preserved in places to 6 meters high. When archaeologists find gates, they can compare them. Architectural design reveals patterns. And this gate matched others discovered across Israel. At Megiddo, archaeologists had found a gate, 6 chambers, professional masonry, dated to the 10th century. At Gezer, another gate, same design, same period. At Hazor, another one, same architectural style, same measurements, same construction techniques. All 3 dated to the 10th century BCE. Now Mazar had found a 4th gate in Jerusalem, same design, same measurements, same construction period. 4 cities with identical gates, all built during the same narrow window of time, all using what appeared to be a standardized blueprint.
And the material from under the earliest floor contained only 10th century BCE pottery. Nothing later, which means that the construction was these buildings were constructed sometime around the second half of the 10th century. We have scientific evidence of construction of these fantastic fortification lines.
Here's where it gets interesting. Those three cities, Megiddo, Gezer, and Hazor, appear together in the Bible. 1 Kings chapter 9 verse 15 specifically describes Solomon's building program. It lists 4 cities where Solomon constructed fortifications: Jerusalem, Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. 4 cities mentioned in one verse. 4 cities with identical gates from the 10th century? The statistical probability of that being random chance approaches 0. Either the Bible accurately recorded Solomon's building project, or you have to believe that 4 separate cities, using 4 separate construction crews at roughly the same time period, all independently decided to build identical gates using identical measurements and identical architectural designs without any central coordination. And that centuries later, scribes writing propaganda just happened to name exactly those 4 cities in their made-up stories about Solomon's building projects. Mazar found more than walls and gates. In 1986, excavating with her grandfather Benjamin, she uncovered 12 massive storage jars, the largest ever found in Jerusalem. They were crushed in place, shattered when the building collapsed during the Babylonian destruction in 586 BCE. But they remained exactly where they'd been positioned for centuries, still in their original location, on an ancient floor.
I felt that this is the right thing, but I could have been wrong. I was very curious to see if I was right. So I took a trench, a small trial trench, and just like this, we could see that we are talking about the real thing.
One of these jars bore an inscription, ancient Hebrew, still readable after 2,700 years. The text said, "To the minister of the bakery." Not a village bakery, the royal bakery, part of the palace administration, a government position. Someone had a title, an official role managing food supplies for the palace complex.
One of the pitoi, the large vessels, had a Hebrew inscription on it, saying can be clearly read in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew, which is very easy because it has only 22 letters, very easily read. Right. It says in Hebrew, Lesar ha'o, meaning to the minister, belong to the minister of O. O, it means probably Ophim. Ophim in Hebrew, it's bakery. This is for the palace complex and palace. It's a huge thing to be responsible for the bakery of the royalty. Wow. So most probably this was the storehouse at the basement of one of the ministers responsible for this in this royal acropolis, Jerusalem.
Think about what that requires. A royal bakery needs organization, supply chains bringing in grain, workers processing it, storage facilities maintaining inventory, a minister overseeing the entire operation, bureaucracy, records, administration, the infrastructure of government. Not a tribal village, a functioning state. The Bible says Solomon built his palace on the Ophel. Mazar was digging on the Ophel. She found royal administrative buildings with Hebrew inscriptions identifying government functions. From the 10th century, in the location the Bible describes. But the most stunning discoveries were still to come. Between 2005 and 2018, Mazar's excavations uncovered over 30 small clay seal impressions. These are called bulla. In ancient times, when you sealed a document or container, you pressed your personal seal into soft clay. The clay hardened, preserving your name, your signature, your identity. The names on these seals connected directly to the Bible. In 2005, Mazar found a seal belonging to Jehucal, son of Shelemiah. Jeremiah chapter 38 verse 1 names him as one of the officials who opposed the prophet Jeremiah. In 2008, she found another seal, Gedaliah, son of Pashur. Same verse, same time period, same royal complex.
After very light cleaning, it was possible to read 3 lines. And then I was looking in the concordancia.
Right.
And it said, who is Yochal ben Shelemiyahu? And then it appeared that Yochal ben Shelemiyahu is a well-known minister at the time of Tzidkiyahu, at the time of the prophet Jeremiah.
2 officials mentioned together in one biblical verse. Their actual seal impressions found meters apart in the same archaeological layer, from the same time period the Bible describes. These weren't generic names that might match biblical figures by chance. These were specific people with patronyms and titles matching the biblical text exactly. Then, in 2009, Mazar found something that made international news. A seal impression with a clear inscription belonging to Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. The personal seal of King Hezekiah, the only royal seal from an Israelite or Judean king ever found in controlled scientific excavation. But there was one more seal in that assemblage, found just 2 meters away from Hezekiah's, damaged with part of the surface missing, where someone's finger had pressed into the soft clay thousands of years ago. What remained was readable, belonging to Isaiah, and below that 3 letters, Nun, Bet, Yod, spelling Navi, the Hebrew word for prophet. The Bible describes King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah as close advisors throughout Hezekiah's reign. The book of 2 Kings details their relationship. The book of Isaiah confirms it. Chronicles adds more information. They counseled together, prayed together, made decisions during national crises. The biblical text makes their partnership inseparable. Now their seals were found together. Same location, same time period, same royal complex. 2 meters apart.
What are the chances that we have just the name of somebody, Yeshayahu, and his family name is Navi? It can be, but it's kind of imaginary. Really? These 2 bullae of these 2 people that were so closely together described in the Bible are found in the same layer, just 1 meter at a distance from each other. The same context, the same layer. So it strikes very clearly that we're talking about the same 2 people.
Mazar's discoveries created a problem, a significant problem, for scholars who had spent decades teaching that the Bible exaggerated, that David and Solomon were minor figures, that the biblical accounts were propaganda written centuries later. Suddenly, there was physical evidence. Walls from the 10th century, gates matching biblical descriptions, administrative buildings in locations the Bible specified, seals bearing names the Bible recorded, all from the time periods the Bible claimed, all in the places the Bible indicated. The minimalist school fought back. They attacked her methodology. They claimed she was letting the Bible cloud her scientific judgment. They argued that her dating was wrong, her interpretations biased, her conclusions predetermined by religious assumptions. Mazar defended her work simply. She used the Bible the same way archaeologists use any ancient text, as a historical source, as a guide. Then she let the physical evidence speak. The pottery didn't lie. The stratigraphy didn't lie. The architecture didn't lie. She published everything in peer-reviewed journals. She documented her methodology. She invited criticism and review. Other scholars examined her work. Hebrew University archaeologists confirmed her dating. They verified her stratigraphy. They checked her pottery analysis. The evidence held up. Her conclusions were sound. The accusations of bias collapsed under scrutiny. What Eilat Mazar revealed before she died was this. The archaeological evidence for a powerful 10th century kingdom in Jerusalem exists. It's documented, it's measured, it's photographed. It's there. Massive fortifications requiring centralized authority. Professional architecture, indicating skilled craftsmen and organized labor. Royal administrative buildings suggesting functioning government. Seal impressions, connecting to specific biblical figures.
3,000 years ago, King David chose this city to be the capital of his own newly established kingdom of Israel. And he chose Mount Moriah, right to the north of this city, as location for the glorious temple he planned for King Solomon's to build.
Mazar died May 25, 2021. She was 64. She'd been sick for 3 years, but even in her final months, she kept working, kept documenting, kept publishing. She knew her discoveries would outlive her. The walls would remain. The seals would remain. The evidence would remain. Whether scholars chose to acknowledge what the stones showed was their decision. The debate over Solomon continues. The minimalist school hasn't conceded. They still argue the evidence can be interpreted differently, that the walls might be from later kings, that the seals could be coincidences, that the gates don't prove centralized planning. The academic battle goes on, but the stones sit on the Ophel. Visitors can see them, touch them, walk through the gatehouse, stand next to the walls, examine the construction. The evidence isn't hidden. It's not locked in museum basements or buried in obscure journals. It's there in Jerusalem, accessible to anyone who wants to look. Before she died, Eilat Mazar revealed what she found beneath Jerusalem. Evidence that the biblical accounts of Solomon's kingdom weren't myths invented by later scribes. They were descriptions of a real kingdom that built monumental architecture in the 10th century Jerusalem. Whether that evidence changes minds or gets ignored, the stones remain, silent witnesses to what was buried beneath the city for 3,000 years. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.